Well, Marvel Animation is kicking off 2025 for Marvel Studios with the brand new Spider-Man series, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. And now we've got some new details, including first looks at several of the Spider-Man suits, including the OSCORP suit, as well as information on the updated origin story. That's right, they changed Spider-Man's origin in the show, and I'm pretty curious if it's gonna work. It's kind of like sacred ground. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about this new Spider-Man series, what Marvel has changed, the new suits, and this deep tie to OSCORP. Well, in the last 24 hours, we've got a lot of new and interesting details about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Not only did we get a first look at several new Spider-Man suits, but we got a brief preview of the upcoming comic, I believe that's released next week, and it revealed the origin change to the Wall Crawler. So let's kick off with that origin story. Now, as many of you know, the show was originally kind of sold as an early take on Tom Holland's Peter Parker, but over the years, well, quite honestly, it has evolved into its own thing, and clearly the character is a variant. Now, this version definitely borrows from the MCU Spidey, but in this world, Norman Osborn becomes the mentor instead of Tony Stark. Now, one of the key parts of Spider-Man is his origin story, and it sounds like they are changing some aspects of that classic tale. Now, there were some early previews of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man #1, the Marvel Comics series that's coming out to kind of support the series, and what we found out was that the radioactive creepy crawly that gave Peter his powers definitely came from a different source. Now, in many variations of the tale, sometimes it's just a science fair, but more often it's been directly tied to OSCORP, and that's what many of us thought this series was going to do. But guess what? It's not. This actually ties to Doctor Strange. Apparently, this version of the spider falls through a portal that Doctor Strange opens when one of his adventures brings him to Midtown High. Now, I have the sneaking suspicion this ties directly to Nico Minoru, who is also part of the show and part of the classic team, the Runaways. Her powers are based in magic, and her inclusion in the show was always super curious, and now that it seems she might be tied directly into the origin story, well, it kind of explains her importance to the series. Honestly, I don't really think it matters that much where the spider came from. The important thing is what happens after Peter gets his powers. The death of Uncle Ben has been the single driving force for the character for decades, and hopefully, we don't know yet, that aspect of the history has not been changed, because if they do, well, I think the collective outrage will be more than Marvel can handle. At least for right now, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, because that would be a huge flub up, but when the show drops, if they did change this, I think you're going to hear a lot of stuff from fans. Now, on a more positive note, we did get a whole bunch of new promo images, and some of them are pretty darn cool. Now, these first two images just feature the classic wall crawler in his red and blue costume. The suits themselves are, well, exactly what I would expect, but I do love in the promo work how we get several variations on the eyes and the spiders, kind of letting us know what Peter went through in the design process. Now, the classic suit itself definitely reminds me of the John Romita Sr. take on the character, and that's always a good thing, so hopefully this is where we ultimately land. Now, the other two images are where it gets a bit interesting. This first image features Spider-Man in a homemade prototype suit. As you can see, all these different aspects are sort of labeled. You see the web fluid canisters, the goggles, the spider icon, and even some protective pads for Peter's knees. Now, I think this is supposed to kind of remind us of that classic Tom Holland suit that he had early in the MCU. And honestly, I love superhero suit evolution because it kind of visually represents the character's growth and something fans can connect to. Now, the final picture, though, features Spider-Man in what people are calling the OSCORP suit. Now, to me, this doesn't look like the OSCORP suit. This definitely looks like the future Foundation suit. But in any case, it's actually pretty impressive. I've always kind of had a soft spot for the white costume, and although I have a couple of issues with the series, I do like this look, and I'm hoping it's not a one-and-done costume. Obviously, Norman Osborn is going to be his classic manipulator in the series, and I suspect at some point Peter will become very aware of that and break away from his mentor. When that happens, he's likely to ditch a lot of the OSCORP accessories. I think that's some of these costume variations we've been seeing, and that will be what ultimately leads him to the classic Spider-Man suit we're so used to seeing. Now, the series is set to release on January the 29th, so we have about 6 weeks before the series finally drops. If you're a fan of this channel, you know I've been a little critical of the animation style, but I'm still going to give this a chance, and honestly guys, I like the suits in that Peter might be directly involved in kind of picking them out and seeing them evolve. Nothing says teenager than lots of variations in clothing, and to incorporate this into the series, especially with such a young version of Peter Parker, that's probably something that will go off well with fans. Obviously, we're going to follow Spider-Man pretty closely. I really do want to know what you guys think of these costume variations and the OSCORP costume looking so much like the future Foundation version of the character. Is the Fantastic Four also in this universe? Tell me what you think in the comments below. Now, before you take off, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, ring that bell for all the updates, and make sure you get every notification because we do daily Marvel and DC content and we don't want you to miss any news.